excused, Aaron is present, Steve is present, and Bill may be jumping in later, we're not sure.
Okay. So
Recording in progress.
Go ahead.
So that was the roll call.
Yep.
As far as the agenda, is there any changes, corrections, additions to the agenda?
There's not.
Okay. Do I do a,
Yep, we need a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion.
okay,
second that.
motion to approve the agenda?
We have a first and a second here, Terry. Steve and Aaron.
Awesome. The agenda's approved. D, regular business. Consideration with possible action to approve execution of the documents in connection with Green Bay Housing Authority properties. Previously discussed, RAD transaction to include Omnibus Resolution 2023-01.
She's on the wrong agenda.
No,
What?
she's not.
No.
23.
21 is Properties 1. She needs to be on the
Property, or the
07.
23-07.
07, yep.
She's
She's just,
she said that, I'm sorry.
she said no one.
It's 20-23-07. Is that what you
Got
got?
it?
and it's not for Properties 1, it's Green Bay Housing
Green Bay
Authority.
Housing Authority.
Yep.
What did I say?
I think you might be on the wrong agenda.
Oh, okay. Huh. All right.
That's okay. We've got it. We've got the documents in connection with the housing authorities previously discussed RAD transaction to include Omnibus Resolution 20-23-07
07, got it.
is the agenda item. And I'll take that from here, Terry.
Okay,
So
good.
we have with us today our attorney, our consultant, our developer, and we have been madly working this week to put the project together for HUD with all of the documents that are needed, as well as working with our investors. I can't even really list. I've seen a list of documents that have been worked on, and I don't know, 30, 40, 50, I'm not quite sure. There's a lot of paperwork involved in this transaction. But we're at the point now where we're going to be submitting things and executing documents with regards to closing our deal here. So this resolution is needed today for this board approval, and then it will be shipped in like immediately to HUD, so they'll have this package. But I've asked, and I'm not sure who's going to do this for me, if this is Attorney Dombrowski or if Trent or Kate, who's going to do this, but Bill had asked, and I think it's a good idea, to go through kind of our closing ownership, our organizational chart, how this is all going to play out, right? What entities will own what our responsibilities are, I mean, how this project's going to work from like the 10,000-foot level. So,
So we need a motion to open the floor.
yep, so we need a motion to open the floor.
I'll motion that.
A motion from Aaron and a second from Steve. Terry?
Pardon me?
We have a motion to open the floor in a second.
All right, open the floor.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, okay,
Aye.
cool. So the floor is open, so who wants to be our speaker today?
This is Ted Mackham, always one not a loss for words. But if Paul really set up the resolution, so to be honest, I do not even know what the resolutions exactly say. I know what the purpose of them are, is to approve the transaction, but Paul kind of drafted, so he can talk to that. In terms of the 10,000-foot view of the transaction, I can give you that summary if you'd like, and then if you have any specific questions, maybe Paul can answer those as your attorney or whatever, or if I can try to answer them. But do you want me to do that, Cheryl? Is just kind of go over the 10,000-foot view?
Yep, sure.
Okay, so, and this is all consistent with what we talked about before, which actually is amazing. That I don't have to come to you and tell you that it's different, because these transactions can move, various ways. But 10,000-foot view is that GBHA is a 49, well, let's back up. We have a entity that we are forming, an LLC, and the tax credit purchaser for this transaction is Enterprise. And Enterprise is going to take an ownership interest per IRS regulations. There's no option on this when they buy the tax credits. That is a 99.99% owner. And so they will buy two types of credits. One is the federal low-income housing tax credit, and the other is the federal state credit for the federal historic credit, and then actually a third credit, which is the state historic credit. And they're buying all of those. So they become a 99.99% owner. The GBHA and Gorman get a little bitty sliver, which is 0.01%, and that 0.01% of the developer entity will be held by a managing member entity, which is its own LLC, and that managing member entity will be held 49% GBHA and 51% Gorman. The reason that Gorman is the 51% is because we're providing all the guarantees, okay? So we kind of have to control the entity, managing member entity. The transaction is the renovation of Mason Manor, and then 48 units that are scattered site, which is kind of the remaining GBHA portfolio. And that will be closing on November 30th. We will then start construction probably the first of the year after we move people, after the holidays. And we will then, after that, conduct almost two deals. One will have a superintendent that will be within Mason Manor and controlling that project, and another superintendent which will be scattered site and controlling that project. The scattered site is probably our most complicated right now, just because it is extremely unique. Every single house is unique, and the scope is unique, and that's kind of what has given us the greatest headaches and challenges to this day, but we think we have our arms around it. All of these documents we've submitted to HUD. We are now waiting for them to approve those documents and hopefully sign the entire deal on November 30th. So that's kind of the 10,000-foot view. And again, I'm not exactly sure what the resolutions say, so maybe Paul can talk to them as to what those say.
Sure, you bet. So, yeah, I mean, the purpose of the resolutions is really, we have been talking about this project, and, we had that prior meeting, where the board kind of gave the go-ahead with doing the, moving forward with the RAD project. And what we really need to do is just toward the end of it, do resolutions that really encompass everything so that the investor is comfortable that, the board adopted resolutions kind of covering everything a bit more specifically. So that's the reason why we have these resolutions that we get blessed by the investor, and they kind of go through sort of the whole, when Cheryl was talking about all the documents, they kind of go through and generically describe all the documents that are going to be entered into. So with regard to the Housing Authority and kind of backing off of 10,000-foot view, we have this new LLC that the tax credit investor comes into, and they put a lot of money into it, and that's, and then they claim tax credits, and, the money is used to help renovate the project. So that's, a positive thing for the project. The that new LLC that the investor is going to be, the 99% owner of, they will enter into a ground lease with the housing authority. Kind of the way it's being set up is the housing authority will still own the land, and then it will lease the land and the improvements to this new LLC. So one of the things you're approving in the resolution is the ground lease structure. And then, as part of that, the improvements have to be owned by the LLC for tax reasons in order to be able to claim tax credits. So we'll convey those improvements to the LLC, but those improvements will revert back to the housing authority when the ground lease is over. And so kind of, other big picture issues. So we've got this ground lease structure as a way that we use to maintain control of the land and ownership of the land, but allow the LLC to be an owner of the improvements while they're claiming tax credits. And there's a 15-year compliance period. We also, as described in the resolutions and were previously described in our earlier meeting, that authority will be making some loans to the LLC in order to help fund the project. Those will be secured by mortgages, so there'll be an obligation to have those repaid, and the property can't be conveyed without dealing with those mortgages. The resolutions also generally authorize us entering into the RAD documents, various and assorted ones there, and also authorize us, or the housing authority, to become that 49% member of the entity that Ted was describing. And we actually do that through an entity that was set up called Housing Authority Managing Member LLC. The housing authority is the sole member of that, and that enters into that 49-51% agreement with the Gorman entity. At stabilization, once things are done and the property's leased up and stabilized, then Gorman's going to exit, and the housing authority entity will be the sole entity in that managing member. So a couple years down the road at property stabilization. I guess some other maybe big picture points. The property manager is going to be GBHA, so we have a property management agreement. As Ted described, Gorman's going to be kind of dealing with managing the construction of the project, so that's kind of who's handling that from a big picture. And then, the idea is at the end of the 15-year period, we'll want the investor will exit, they will claim their tax credits. The plan would be for them to exit. The housing authority will have a right of first refusal to acquire the property, essentially for any debt that remains on the property. So kind of taking over that debt obligation and paying any exit taxes for the investor. But at that time, once you get the investor out, then you're kind of on both sides of the transaction. And if we want to get rid of the ground lease structure at that time, we could do so. I think we'd have to probably get part approval for stuff like that, but you'll be on both sides once we get through the compliance period. And then, if it makes sense, we can look into kind of unwinding some of this ground lease structure. So that's kind of a little more on the 10,000 foot and why I'm giving you, 4 pages of resolutions that kind of more specifically describe everything that's going on, just to kind of, keep all parties happy that it's been approved.
Paul, do we know what the debt will be at the time that we might buy the properties back for the debt amount?
I'm hoping that maybe Caitlin or Trent might have that kind of a little more handy. I was actually trying to find that when, just before the call to see, you know, what the WIDA debt will be, you know.
Yeah. Well, I can answer that, Paul. So, the WIDA debt is a 35-year amortization debt product that you will know exactly what the debt is in the 15 years when you take it over to the penny. And then you will also have all of your, when they say subject to the debt, the reason that you won't be really paying any money except for nominal fees to get the investor out is because you have all the debt. You know what I mean? So you guys have all these soft loans that are coming in to make the project happen from your reserves, and then you have the actual WIDA hard debt, and all of that in year 15, you're just gonna say is kind of ongoing. As Paul indicated, after the 15th year, you can unwind things as you see fit, because now you control everything because the investor's out. Tax credit compliance is out. You can pretty much do what you want, I guess, subject to HUD approval, you know, whatever. But then you control everything, and you will know the exact debt at the time of that 15-year period, yes.
We don't know what that number is gonna be roughly now.
We do. I don't know if we have that actual number handy. We probably do. I don't know if Trent's on.
Yeah, I'm on. If you give me just a couple of minutes, I have it up right now. I can do that calculation quick.
We have a whole 20-year cash flow schedule with debt. So we have all of what we, you know, any year he'll know what the debt is, and he'll get that for you in a second. He's just going to look it up. And you'll know, but it is definitely a set amount because it's amortizing, and you know, it will be, the debt will be consistent with what the property can take, and hopefully you'll be at a debt coverage ratio, which is your debt over income, the ratio of that, at a very healthy ratio at that time. So all of the projections that we have that we close on are extremely conservative, and I'd say 75 to 80% of the time we kill those projections in terms of a year 15 result.
And I just pulled up what the remaining balance on the WIDA debt will be after 15 years. It will be roughly just under 5.3 million.
So we'll pay that debt for an additional 20 years, basically. But
Exactly.
the operating expenses, I'm hearing that we'll have enough money to cover that based on your projections.
Absolutely, it should be extremely healthy in terms of your debt coverage ratio. It's called DCR.
Okay. And part of this deal is that we keep our staff in place, fully funded, right? And we'll enter an agreement with with Enterprise with regards to how we manage the building, permissions, those types of things. I mean, I've read through that document, and I think you guys are working on that still, right? But, you know, we're pretty much running the shop for the most part. If there's any major things that need to be repaired or replaced over a certain amount of money, you know, we'll need to work with our investor on that to get approvals, right?
But Cheryl, you know what's very important about that is that it's 100% correct, but you have reserves to draw from there. So you've got cash for anything that would be projected within that 15-year period.
Just gonna slow us down a little bit for my simple mind. In these resolutions, there's an understanding of a memorandum of understanding, right, in a resolution, which feels a little peculiar, but that's specifically between the Housing Authority and Gorman. Is there language in here about a relationship between the Housing Authority and Enterprise? Because I didn't see that in the...
Yeah, let me explain that. Sorry, this is Ted Mack again. The MOU is officially in that resolution on this date. The because we have not executed the operating agreement. The operating agreement is this 150-page document that is the partnership agreement between GBHA, Gorman, and Enterprise. And so that memorandum, all of those terms, and why it's in there today in terms of the resolution is because we can say to you, because now we're at the 11th hour of that operating agreement, that all of those terms have been successfully incorporated into the operating agreement, the way that you signed them and you agreed to. However, it will be superseded by the operating agreement, which is this 150-page document that all three parties will sign.
Yeah, I understand, Ted. I just didn't see the language in here that it gets replaced with the actual agreement once.
Oh, okay,
Have it,
sorry.
like, I
Yep.
don't see
Yep,
that.
that's okay.
I can explain that a little bit. I mean, the MOU kind of started us off down the path of, hey, here's how we're gonna go and try and put this deal together. You know, Gorman's responsible for X, Y, and Z, and they're gonna, find an investor, help find the debt provider, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
And it's really more like an MOU on, okay, developer, we're gonna work together to try and put this deal together. But, kind of post-closing is not really gonna have relevance. The approval of sort of your entry into that big 150-page agreement Ted is talking about is on page 3 of the resolutions, where it talks about you approving, entering into the LLC documents, and then you're also approving signing on to these resolutions that are for the managing member entity. I attached those as Exhibit A, and that is where we're saying is a 49% owner of the managing member, and Gorman's saying is an owner. Yep, we're going to allow the investor to come in to our LLC. We're going to enter into the operating agreement so that we lay out the terms of them coming in, how much capital they're going to put in, when they're going to put in, et cetera. And so that Exhibit A is sort of new signing on to what we're going to do in our 49% capacity of that managing member. And does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I guess I just, Cheryl's asking about maintenance dollars over the span of that relationship, and I don't see reference to that relationship in the resolutions. That's what I'm like. So is like, does this document need to contain some parameters for our relationship with Enterprise, or that's just a pass-through from our relationship with Gorman and the MOU as it describes investors? Does that question make sense?
Well, that's picked up like the relationship with Enterprise, if you will, I guess would be picked up 2 places. One, GBHA is going to be the property manager under a property management agreement. And that one of those that we've been going through, to make sure that we're comfortable with the amount of, as kind of brought up earlier, that there's sufficient funds in there to pay salary, et cetera. That kind of spells out property management items. Then as far as some of the other matters go, the relationship with Enterprise, that's contained in that LPA or operating agreement, where, in addition to the property management stuff, as a managing member, until stabilization, Gorman will really make those decisions subject to some approval rights of us. But after stabilization, we become the managing member. And we also have, that it also spells out what a managing member, things we can do without their consent, the things we need to get consent for. If you wanted to add on a $500,000 addition to manor, you're going to have to go talk to anybody.
That's your support that. And we're 8%. Thank you.
I think that answers it. Yeah, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions that I guess you guys have with regards to this?
Check was on and ready if there was any cash flow or operating questions or expenses, he was available as well for that.
Yeah, I'm here if anybody has any questions. You know, Shirley, yesterday you had kind of talked a little bit, or wanted me to talk a little bit about, you know, staffing and things like that.
Yeah,
Is that still the case?
Yep, can you maybe share some of those thoughts, Trent?
Yeah, absolutely. So in conjunction with Stephanie, the GBA accountant, you know, she led the charge here in putting together an operating budget that, you know, we're fully budgeted for all of the existing GBHA staff members on both the maintenance and lease-up side. In how this is structured, we bifurcated that per the investor's requirement into a small portion, which will be the property management fee, which generally speaking in tax credit partnership, you think of those going towards the salaries of, you know, the regional property manager, you know, the higher ups in property management that aren't working on the ground. In this case, you know, you're thinking that's Cheryl, that's Stephanie, etc. But that's a piece of it that I guess the investor is requiring us to categorize as property management fee. But the property management fee plus the salaries line item, you know, equals what we want to budget for all of the salaries within the organization, so you're fully set there. We made sure that the property management fee could be paid out in a manner that's consistent with payroll, and that it's increasing at the same rate in our assumptions as the, I guess, salaries line items at 3% per year. So you should be, you know, fully budgeted for where you're at going forward. Sorry, is that somebody asking a
No,
question?
I don't think so. That might be, I don't know, Terry, are you muted? maybe?
Yeah, that was in my background.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. But yeah, if anybody has any questions about that, I can absolutely answer them.
Well, and, you know, hopefully, when we do this massive remodel, you know, we won't have the needs that we do now with regards to maintenance and a lot of these costs that are coming through, you know, because our billing will be, you know, we'll have a lot of these things new and fixed. Knock on wood.
Yeah,
Which
That's
is-
how that works always.
And a couple of other things along those lines, you know, like you said, right now, you know, you're completely rehabbing this building and these, you know, putting a lot of work into these scattered sites that currently require, I think you have 4 maintenance techs. And of course, we're going to fully budget for the existing staff, but it's not to say that going forward, if, you know, somebody were to leave, it's possible that you might not need to backfill them just because the work required on the sites just won't be there to, you know, actually require 4 people working on it or however many there currently are.
Yep.
We're fully budgeting for, you know, all the existing, or I guess historical costs with respect to maintenance and repairs, which again, per Cheryl's comment, hopefully that's going down significantly over time and you can realize a lot of savings there. And also we're fully budgeting utilities as they are seen in the historical data, which again, we're, you know, in Mason Manor alone, we're overhauling all systems, you know, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and all of these are going to help you realize major savings on the utility line items as well. And not to mention, you know, the cell tower income that you're currently, you know, bringing in isn't being encumbered by any of these debt products. You know, we weren't allowed to underwrite it in a loan or any of these other kind of commitments, so that's just also going to be an income that you're going to have to pad the debt going forward.
Yes, that's a good thing.
Yep.
Any other questions? It's a complicated deal for sure, but, you know, I have confidence. I mean, Jamie's been in the thick of this, more so than me, but even just reviewing documents and working with Paul and Caitlin, we feel comfortable
Yes.
in moving forward with this, and that, you know, we're looking out for our own best interest along with Attorney Dombrowski, and, you know, we feel like we need to move forward on this, get this moving, so our recommendation is to approve these.
Sign in the 11th hour.
Are there any other questions?
Let me see, I'm on page I'm on page 4, and I see further resolved, Cheryl Rainier Wigg in her capacity as Executive Director and William Vandecastle in his capacity as Chair of the Authority are each hereby authorized, empowered, and directed to take any and all such action on behalf of the Authority or Housing Authority Managing Member as deemed necessary or desirable to effectuate the intent of these resolutions. What does that mean?
I can answer that. That's sort of a common,
Thanks, Paul.
that's kind of a common catch-all that you see at the end of resolutions like this, which is kind of basically saying, you know, these resolutions authorize the transaction pretty specifically, right? I mean, we go through 3 pages of describing all the various, but if there's, you know, something that's part of the transaction and part of the intent of getting the transaction closed that, you know, is arguably not in, you know, a document that's not listed or something. It's kind of a catch-all to basically say you can rely on, that other people looking at our documents can rely on the fact that if Cheryl and William execute them, they're authorized to execute, essentially. So it's kind of a boilerplate sort of catch-all that we include in resolutions.
Okay.
Like getting a mortgage on Bill's house or something, right?
I'm glad you said Bill's house.
Just joking, just joking.
Is that,
I think so.
okay.
Yeah.
So, we need a motion?
To
Or do
close
you want to
the
close,
floor.
maybe we should close the floor? Motion to close the floor.
I'll motion that.
I'll second it.
Aaron and Steve motion to close the floor. Terry?
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Alrighty. So the floor is closed. Now, don't leave, people, because remember, we have another, just advising you, we have another meeting after this one for another resolution. But, so it sounds like we need a motion.
So, yeah.
Are we approving what are we approving?
We need a motion to approve these resolutions as presented as Article 1 of regular business, right?
Yep, this omnibus resolution 20.
Yeah.
Got it.
I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Omnibus resolution 1107.
Motion approved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Okay. So that resolution, we just have a little bit of business yet, folks, for the end of this meeting, and then we can jump into the next one real quick, but, do you want me just to roll with it, Terry?
Pardon me?
Do you want me just to roll with the rest of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if you could.
We have the bills. Were there any questions on the bills that were in the packet?
Nope.
None? How about the financial report? Is there a Langen report?
There's not a Langen
There's no
report.
Langen report. Director's report, just briefly, you know, there are a number of projects under construction in Green Bay, City East Apartments on Walnut, Bay City Lofts on University Avenue, the Fort are all affordable housing projects under construction. The RDA at their meeting next Tuesday will be considering a community land trust and possibly setting one of those up. We're also looking at planning options for a couple of sites, the old Zozo's Eagles Nest. We have a proposal in for 52 affordable housing units to be built there. They're going to ask for a planning option. And that we're still under a planning option with Monroe and Chicago, with Dewan Cherry for 33 units. That's right by the Hardee's and the House School downtown. And then the Jazz House will be completed in December, so I'll make sure you guys all get an invite for that.
Isn't that?
A&W? Did I say Hardee's? Yeah. Oh my God, I'm
No,
sorry.
that's old.
Hardee's was there.
Yeah, like
30
30 years ago.
See what this project has done to me? A&W. And then Jazz House, which are the townhomes, kitty corner from East High, will be completed in December. So with that occupancy report, we're probably pretty low at Mason Manor.
Yeah, we have 37, a few more coming, so that's good for Gorman and Company, so we can do a relocation Tentatively starting in January for Mason Manor.
So we'll start moving tenants, yep, in January, which will be a whole nother project in itself to get people. And then, just for the board members, we're looking to change our December meeting to December 14th if possible. So I will send out emails to you guys to make sure that we can get a quorum. The Gateway Collective, their resolution, they're asking us to approve that resolution, which will then have to go to our city council, and that meeting's December 19th. So we have to move our meeting up in order to make that bonding issue for them. So that's it for this meeting.
I'll make a
Terry?
motion to adjourn.
Okay, Steve made a motion to adjourn, Aaron seconded that, all those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
All right, anyone opposed? Great.
Answer?
So that's the end of the GBH Housing Authority meeting.